I'm your host, Les Allen, entrepreneur, builder, and leader with 30 plus years of scars and success to prove it. I've been broke and blessed in boardrooms and courtrooms, and now I'm here to share lessons I've learned. Each week, we'll talk business, life, relationships, and how to build what really matters with raw lessons, real strategy, and the mindset to move forward. Let's get to work. Hello, and welcome to The Rebuild. I'm your host, Les Allen, and today we're going to be discussing franchise opportunities. And we're going to talk to a friend of mine who has been in the franchising business for over 30 years and hear what he has to say, his insights into it, and some other business tips that he has learned along the way. But first, I'm going to share 3 quick tips about franchise opportunities. Fact one: franchises in the US bring in over $860 billion a year. That's crazy. Fact two: everyone knows that starting a business is risky. 20% of independent businesses don't even survive within the first year. But with the franchise, your odds gets way better. The brand, the systems, the training, it's like starting a race 10 yards ahead of everyone else. So why wouldn't you consider a franchise if you're considering getting into business? It's a little safer. And fact three: when I say franchises, you probably think of fast food, right? Burgers, pizzas, drive throughs. But here's the twist: food is less than 40% of the franchising game. The rest is senior care, gyms, pet grooming, even tutoring. The franchise world is way bigger than the fryer. But to twist today is we're going to talk about the fryer. Allow me to introduce my guest, Mr. Stuart Ray. Stuart, thank you for joining us today.
Les, thanks for having me. It's always good to see you and be with you.
Likewise, sir. I really appreciate you and all the things you've not only done for me, but for what you've done and are continuing to do in the West Michigan community. So
No,
I'm
thank
going
you.
to give a little background about you, just a little bit, and then we'll get into some questions. So, for close to 30 years, Stewart was the king of Burger King in West Michigan. His empire was made up of 42 Burger King restaurants that he owned and operated since 1971. His franchise operation once ranked as high as the fifth largest in the Burger King worldwide system, with over 60 million in annual revenue. Since selling his empire in 2001, he has been serving the community and other business owners by holding multiple seats on various boards, and most recently as a mentor with the Service Corps of Retired Executives, also known as SCORE, where he assists both nonprofit and for-profit organizations maximize their potential. So once again, please help me welcome Mr. Stuart Ray to the Rebuild. All right. So Stuart, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So before we dive into the business conversation, I've got a quick set of this or that questions. Just pick the first answer that comes to mind. It's a fun way for the audience to get to know you a little better and for us to loosen up. So, with that being said, Stuart, do you prefer a latte or tea?
Tea.
All right. That sounds like a great beverage of choice. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early.
Early. Early bird gets the worm, huh?
Early, early.
Do you take a big risk or do you play it safe?
Big risk. Go,
Big
go big
risk.
or go home. Go big or go
Go big
home.
or go home. Yes, sir. Are you would you prefer Netflix or movie theater?
Movie theater.
Movie theater. All right. And the last of the questions, would you drive a pickup or a Porsche?
Pick up.
Pickup. All right. Learn something from him, folks. Learn something. Those quick answers say a lot. All right. So back to the Burger King empire. That kind of empire does not happen by accident. So let's talk about how you built it, Stuart. First of all, how did you get into the burger business?
Well, Les, my wife and I got married as at the end of our junior year in college. We had every intent, or I had every intention of going to grad school and coming back and teaching in the somewhere in the system. That I was a double major, biology and chemistry. Hope College had given me an opportunity to teach a non-majors course, Intro to Biology, and I just loved it. In April of our senior year, we gave birth to our first child who had complications, and we didn't have insurance to pay for his stay at the hospital. So we put grad school off. I had started working at a restaurant in downtown Holland right after we got married because we had to pay rent, we had to buy books, we had to do those kinds of things. So I stuck with it, started to climb the corporate ladder. We bought a house and then paid off the baby, and I reapplied to grad school only to realize I was now making more money with more responsibility than any college professor at that time was
Right.
making. And besides, Les, you know, this goes, we had a TV and a couch, so we had a standard of living. So it's pretty hard to go backwards. We also had 2 kids, and it probably wouldn't be fair to drag them back, you know, to I'm not going to call it poverty, but lower standard of living. So I stuck with the Burger King thing. I earned a little bit of equity. I learned a little more equity and had the opportunity to purchase 19 of the existing restaurants in the late 1980s.
Okay, so from 71 through the late 1980s, you worked in the system, gained equity over time. And then when the previous owner at that time decided he wanted to get out of business, he offered you the opportunity to buy, you said 19?
19. He offered me the opportunity. I decided it was probably time for me to do something else. I had someone professionally write my resume, and though it was quite long, it was very, very shallow. Hamburgers, hamburgers, hamburgers. And I'm going, oh, gee, I'm not going to get very far. So I went to work finding the resources to make that acquisition. And it took me 18 months. And I tell all my mentees that this is a long-term gain. Don't expect it to happen overnight. And had the opportunity to pull in that golden ring. And I also tell my mentees that when that golden ring comes, pull and pull hard, because
Pull
it
hard,
doesn't come off.
right?
It
That's
doesn't
yes,
come off.
right.
So
Okay.
then,
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So then we took the next 11 years and built it out to 42 restaurants and 2,200 employees, and the rest is history.
So hold on. Let me do some math here, because you said 11 years. You went from 19 stores to 42. So if my math is right, that is 23 stores in 11 years.
Yeah, and I'm going to change your math a little. So we probably did that in 9 or 8 years, because
Oh.
it takes time to settle in. Right? You got to find the bathroom key and whether or not you're going to make this thing work. And, you know, leaders aren't leaders unless they're people following. So you got to get people to follow.
That's right.
I knew the group. I had hired the group. We already had relationships. It wasn't that difficult, but you're still figuring some things out. So I would say it was 8 or 9 years.
That's tremendous growth in 8 or 9 years. So my other original question was, did it happen organically? But I don't believe that you can do that organically without some type of decision to scale it up like you did.
Yeah. So, for your audience, if they don't know, that the economic objectives of the franchisor are about 180 degrees different than the franchisee. We each make money differently, and we each have our own set of risks and liabilities. And so the franchisor makes money when franchisees pay franchise fees. So there is an initial franchise fee for every franchise you buy, regardless of the concept you're in. So they make money that way. They make money from royalties. Sometimes they're involved in the financing, so they make money that way. But they're not worried about people coming to work. They're not worried about they're not worried about making payroll. They're not worried about sitting in front of city councils and getting screamed at. That they don't have that grief to deal with. So you really have two really different models and objectives. And then the franchisor complicates this a little because to sustain their cash flow, because they've got borrowing and covenants at the bank, they run 99-cent Whoppers during January, and of course the franchisees suck on pond scum at that point in time. And
Exactly.
so, anyways,
Yeah, those 90. I remember those 99-cent Whopper sale days.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I was fortunate enough to create a development team and could empower that team to make the decisions that needed to be made to scale this thing. I had a contractor who had deep relationships in the community, knew who the zoning folks were at City Hall, knew who to call, knew what strings to push. I brought enough financial resources to the party where, we could really make some of the political machinery work in our direction, if that's the right way to put that. Because oftentimes it is who you know, not what you know. Make these things happen. Your audience may know that sometimes you can outweigh a city commission because you've got the resources to do that, or the legal staff. Sometimes you've got advisors such as environmental groups who are more educated in regards to environmental issues than the city may be. So I'm just babbling here. So
no, but you're sharing some good nuggets. So continue babbling.
I had a CFO who was well connected at the bank, so he could manage that relationship. We had an architect that we worked with over and over and over again, and the contractor, and the architect came up with basically four different building designs based upon the lot size. So that work's all done. So we don't need to micromanage this thing site by site. And then we learned that if we're not keeping 12 potential properties in the air, because it is a little bit of a juggling act,
Right.
that growth would come to a standstill. Then at the same time, the franchisor, is really excited because we're building. The competitors are going, oh my God, what's happening? They're building. So you now get into in the franchise business, you kind of get into this market share conversation or mindset, kind of fuels things. And as you can imagine, if you have a real successful opening, that motivates everybody else in the other restaurants. Everyone wants to work for a winner. Everyone wants to give to a winner. So there's, you're really the best way for me to put this, and I do this in my nonprofit work with my mentees, is unless you're the same way, once you get this fire going, don't let it go out, because it's real hard to get going again. So
yes.
Right? So you got to keep pouring the wood on this thing. You got to do it smartly. But
keep that fire burning. Yeah, because when you're hot, you're hot. When you're hot, you're hot. And when you're cold,
it is real hard to get hot again.
Yes.
Because you've had your day in the sun or the spotlight, and
you've had to run. That's right.
So Tom Peters wrote a book known as In Search of Excellence, and again, I use this one a lot too. He says that a tomato is ripe for 1 millisecond. Either you're growing or you're dying. Now, which side of that equation do you want to be on? Well, I want to be on the grow side. I don't want to be on the dying side.
I'm with you. So, with everything you just shared, which was great, what was the most difficult part of operating the restaurants? And I'm going to kind of break it up a little bit. One of the things that I learned from you is that when you look at a Burger King restaurant or BBB development restaurant, we're looking at 3 different businesses at that one building. So we had the development of the real estate, we had the operations, and then we had the people. That's am I saying that right? I think it was
You're right.
those.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're operating 3 different entities within that one building. And what was the most difficult part of the operation of a franchise building or restaurant? Let me say that.
Maybe your audience runs into this too. I tend to set pretty high standards of operations. Um, I think that's important to do. Everyone in the audience knows that, an accountant only bills 80% of his work week. So that says to me that he's only 80% effective. So I would tend to set the bar at 120, knowing that I'm not going to get 100. I'm only going to get 80% of 120. So now I'm at 96%, right? So as I set those standards of operation, the corporation, because they're not capable of providing compliments or saying, attaboy, comes in and says, no, I think you can do better. Now, again, keep in mind how they're making money, right? So
Correct.
if you're running an operation that has 100% health inspection reports and their QSR surveys are at 100% and customer satisfaction scores at 100%. Now, no one gets to 100% on those, but they still want that. They want more. They want more. So that was the hard thing for me to deal with and negotiate. I'm going, heck, I'm 20% out of the competition. What more do you want me to do? The building's only so big.
It sounds like they were the mother that was never satisfied.
There you go. Thank you very much. So the work ethic also in the 1970s was much different than it is today. I sit on this cul-de-sac and none of the teenagers work at all. So for me to get someone to help me with the snow in the winter, if we're going away, for example, I got to hire somebody from outside the neighborhood. I'm not trying to be critical of that family. All I'm saying is that when you and I were 12, we already had jobs.
We were out shoveling snow, cutting grass.
Right. Raking leaves, delivering papers.
Absolutely.
Falsifying our applications so that we
to
could
work. Yes.
Right.
I'm 13, but I'm 15 on this document.
Yeah, right. And then, and the expectations from our parents were that if you want that car, you got to have skin in the game, right? That either you're buying it all by yourself or so we learned a very different set of responsibilities as we were growing up than some of these kids are learning today. So some of that crept into the restaurant. I even had, Les, I worked at a homeless shelter when I left the Burger King system to try to make change around community. But I had individuals who were 45 who had never worked a day in their life. And I'm going, what am I going to do with you?
Right.
Right. So never worked a day in their life. So that workforce became more complex as time went on. We found ways to address it. We found ways to deal with it. Part of it was bringing seniors in who acted as mentors. That was that worked really well for a period of time. And then we reached this point in time where, for whatever reason, kids really were not respecting their grandparents. And I'm going, now there's only so many things as business owners we get to control.
Correct.
Right? We're really not in control of much of anything. We reach this sales height, the workforce gets a little more complicated. And of course, you want to maintain that, you want to keep that fire burning. You want to keep that momentum going somehow. So you've got to get fairly creative in regards to how you're going to bring that workforce in, how you're going to train them. Anyways, so I'm going to sidebar here. So I ended up saying that I really thought I needed someone to help me with organizational development. And I placed an ad. And I got people from Steelcase and Herman Miller and the big companies all wanting to come work for me. Well, I'm the 5th largest employer, so I've got some, I got some political pull, or what's the word I want, Les? That,
Clout, some clout.
clout,
How about that?
clout.
Yeah.
People think I've got some magic going on. Little did they know. But I ended up with a lady that came from an emeritus department at a local college. She said, Stuart, I don't really know what we're going to do, but I'll take this journey with you. And I'm going, bingo, because that's what this is about. It's about a journey. It's not about a can of product. It's about a journey. We did the negotiations, and I said to her, so when are you going to go to the restaurant? She says, I'm not going to the restaurant. I said, well, we got a problem here. And she says, I'm looking at the problem. I go, what? Do you know who I am? Right? Do you know who I am? No, I'm looking at the problem. I said, no, Mary Jo, I hired you to go into the restaurants. She said, I'm not. You created it. This is you to fix. So the next day, which is normally my style, I put her in the office across from me because I want to keep an eye on you. And I continue to do that when I have an office. And then I'd go in periodically, and I'm going, Mary Jo, you're still here when you go to restaurants. She says, you're not listening to me. I'm not going. This is for you to fix. And she was 100% right. It is for the leader to fix. It can't be delegated to a vice president. It can't be delegated to HR. It is the leader to fix. And that's what led to my servant leadership work and really putting the internal customer first. We flipped the triangle. The minute we put the internal customer first, the whole thing just blossomed.
And Stuart, if you wouldn't mind, can you share with the audience, what do you mean when you say flipping the triangle and putting that internal customer first?
Well, there's a triangle, and usually the CEO sits at the top of it. And the CEO then tells everybody else what to do. And often this empowers all these folks down here.
Right.
Okay. And so what I did is I flipped this triangle around. So I am actually at the bottom working for all these folks.
Once the people who are now at the top saw that you were doing that, what did that do to morale and to sales, maybe even?
That is really where we hit the peak of our operation. The minute I took a very different approach to this. So my turnover went from 150% a year to under 50. Now,
wow.
That's still a lot of bodies, but it's a whole lot less than it was.
Correct.
In food service today is probably at 400 or 500%. I mean, it is turnover. It's just grueling work. And as customers, we wonder why folks aren't getting trained, but it's exhausting.
Because you're constantly training people as an operator.
Constantly. And if you push training down to the newest employee, you're losing all kinds of retained knowledge and experience. So it's really got to be somewhere up in the upper level where the training gets done. So, but that led to, how many hours on a position does a new employee need before they're competent on a position? Now, when you and I run around to retail or restaurants, we find that, entry-level kids or people are doing 4 or 5 things. It takes 30 days of constant work before you're competent at what you do. Well, if that's the science, then we need to restructure the organization and the scheduling so that we can do that. Because turnover costs every one of us money at the end of the day. And again, I'm surprised at the number of mentees or business owners who absolutely refuse to measure retention. You got to measure retention.
That is so important in every business, in any business, your retention rate.
Any business. I don't care what it is. Hospitals, churches, I don't care what it is. It makes a big difference. So,
So I'm going to kind of switch gears, but I want to just kind of share something with you. You probably didn't know this unless I told you, but probably in 2003-ish, McDonald's presented me with an opportunity for multiple stores. And I thought long and hard about it. And the reason I chose not to go that route was because of I couldn't rest with the thought of my $1 million operation being operated on the backs of teenagers.
Yeah.
And how was I going to compete against football games on Fridays, parties on Saturdays? And I just saw myself opening every Saturday and Sunday for the rest of my life. So that's why I asked that question about what was the most difficult, because when I had that opportunity, I couldn't get beyond the staffing piece in my brain. And maybe that held me back from a golden opportunity, but that was something that I had to deal with. And I ultimately said, no, thank you to that. So I have to give you kudos for going beyond that 42 times and dealing with it.
Well, you do notice I'm not doing it any longer. So.
Right. So I want to take a moment and for the audience, paint a picture as I move into the transition to the next set of questions. Again, back in the 90s, Stuart wasn't just running Burger Kings, he was running the game. As I stated earlier, he had 42 plus stores, millions in revenue, and one of the largest franchise groups in the system. And in the middle of all that, he cracked the door open and let me in. He gave me a shot to help develop Burger Kings in the inner city. Now, listen, opportunities like that just don't fall in your lap. Someone has to see something in you. And Stuart, you saw something in me. So I have to ask you a few things about why you made that move of allowing me into your burger kingdom. So my question around that is, at that time, you were already running a major operation. What made you willing to take a chance on a young whippersnapper named Les Allen?
Well, I think the problem we all have is we see the world through our own eyes. We can't see what other people see in us, if that makes any sense. That
It does.
I mean, we all come with our own fears. We may come across as very self confident, but the reality is we do have fears that we're all struggling with. So this is, maybe other people have told you this, but when you show up, you show up fully present. You're inquisitive, which makes you very dangerous in a very good way. You're hungry, and I put that in a very positive spin. You command attention. You don't ask for it, but people sense you. People know your presence when you're in the room. And when we went to Herman's funeral in February, and you were there, it was so obvious. So many people were focused on Les Allen. So as I've thought about this prior to this interview, in many respects, and I hope this comes across okay, you are much like the prodigal son. That people open their arms to you, they want to lay things out for you, they want to make things, life is not always comfortable, but they respect you, they honor you. So once you showed up, I'm going, oh, here's somebody I can work with. See, there's value to me too, right? So I've got a young man who is listening, who's taking it all in. So not only are you receiving, but you're giving back also at the same time. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but you also know, Les, that you've mentored people. There are people you get off the phone with and you're going, well, this isn't going anywhere. And then, right? And then
Right.
right? And then you get off the phone, and I am so excited about working with this individual. I hope they hang in there,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not a hoverer. That if hey, if you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. There are other people you can talk to. But boy, I sure hope you hang in here with me. That
Right.
because I'd love to see where this goes at the end of the day. So you're the latter. Those are innate gifts. Um, I think, Les, you're a very special individual, and I think those gifts have taken you a very long way in your success.
Oh, thank you. I just, looking back now, listening to what you just shared, I can say that your decision to give me a shot helped me look and approach everything that I've done to date the same way, with the hunger, with the attentiveness, and the drive. And I think what you did, offering James and I that opportunity back in the early 90s, only allowed that to grow. So I thank you for that. So,
Well, you thank you for that, but you earned that. So,
no,
but Les, I see I follow you on LinkedIn. I can see it in your posts. Um, I can read the sense of excitement and exploration in your language. So you haven't lost that yet. Don't lose it.
I don't think I can. I think that is Shirley Allen's fault. We had National Geographics in the house at an early age, so I was always venturing off to other places in the world trying to get there. So yes, the sense of exploration is definitely something I will tie back to her.
Live
But
and well.
so I did want to say thank you. Now I want to transition into leadership lessons that we can share to the audience as well. What type of leadership style do you say you have? What worked best with your operations?
So
And we've kind of touched on it with your earlier comment, but I think we did, but I'll allow you to continue.
I have come to learn that work is really part of the spiritual journey that we're all on. Um, I've reached the conclusion that the more aligned I am with God's intentions, the better things go.
Mhm.
So that whole 2 or 3 years I spent with Mary Jo was, very instrumental to me. So, when you start as a restaurant manager, or not even a restaurant manager in a retail outlet or a small subdivision. And this may not be fair. I was pretty much about control, and I probably thought I was pretty hot stuff. And you're going to do it my way, and I don't care what you think. And I remember writing bonus programs for my first employer, and the harder I can make it, the happier it was. And
Hmm.
that's not the way to write a bonus program.
Right.
But
So when did that switch then, Stuart? When did you that mindset of making that bonus program as difficult as possible switch to one that was more aligned with where you are now?
well, I had two things going on. I had, well, you can see in my interview with Mary Jo that I've got an ego, and um, so at the same time, our eldest son had a backup. So Jonathan is our eldest son. We ended up putting him in Christian school because the public school was a behemoth. And
Hmm.
Ian and I grew up in a two-room schoolhouse. My wife and I grew up in two-room schoolhouses. So we wanted a smaller and more intimate school. So there was a school in the neighborhood. All the kids went to Christian school. We ended up moving to Ada to build a big house because we have an ego. And Jonathan's grades were, it's not about, for me, it's not about grades, it's about effort. But his grades were not acceptable to his mother.
Hmm.
And so I would show up on school every Friday and what the heck's going on here and what are you doing to fix this? And we were doing our thing at home, but what are you doing to help? And so I was, do you know who I am? I'm here. Something's got to change here. So John goes off to Christian High, and for your audience, he's the first 9th grade class. Our Christian school started at 10th grade. Jonathan's grades turned right around. And I said to myself, it's the culture. The culture in middle school is different than the high school, and that's the reason this is going so much better. He made the tennis team. His mother's assistant tennis coach. He's the #1 tennis player on the tennis team. He's got a girlfriend. Report cards are coming home at 3.5, 3.6, whatever. And then the tennis coach calls in and says, hey, by the way, he's academically ineligible. Well, what do you mean? We have his report cards. No, he's really a 1.6 student. And he had, as it turns out, he had found a way to falsify his report cards. And now, I would see that as an entrepreneur, but
I was going to say he's figuring a way out of this.
But that's also his need to deal with his parents, right? He's looking for affirmation. And so that's a big moment, because I really thought that we had this solid relationship with our kids. So we went to counseling. We went to a doctor for him first, and because we knew we were out of control. We had no idea what to do. And we ended up going to counseling, and we heard things from the high school that we really didn't want to hear. And, he's not going to amount to anything. He really doesn't belong here. We don't know what his career path is capable of doing, because he's not performing academically. Well, in all of this, we learned that there are 144 learning styles, and that teachers only teach to their 3 or 4. Anyone outside of their 3 or 4 is considered special ed now. So we armed him with his learning style, and we encouraged him, Jonathan, you're going to have to live with this the rest of your life. So we encouraged him to go in and have these conversations with his teachers, and his grades turned around. Now, Les, I had resources. I could love and hug this kid, or I could kick him out. Right. And so I decided that, or God decided for me, we're going to love and hug this kid, and we're going to get through this. And we got through this. And there was still bumps in the road. But maybe not. Maybe it was just normal development. So I kind of have that going on. So I walk back into the Michigan Street Burger King, which is now gone. And I'm watching all these doctors, and I'm watching the staff, and I'm going, I got a huge disconnect here, that they're not respecting these young people and what they're trying to accomplish. They're kind of playing hoity-toity. And I'm not feeling good about this. So I've really said to myself, what in the heck have I created here? And it was not intentional, but it's kind of like the blinders came off. So again, then I got Mary Jo coming into my life. So I really moved from, I think I know better than the rest of you, to, gee, maybe I really don't. And this is where I go, this is really a spiritual journey. Plus, I'm a lot like you. I'm curious. I want to know what's on the other side of that wall. And if there is a wall, I'm going to find a way to get on the other side of it. And again, kids don't do, right? Kids don't do that today. They give up. AI is not going to get you on the other side of the wall.
Not at all.
So I'm curious. So once I learned this about my son, I'm going, what in the hell's happened to everybody else? Here's a blue-eyed, blonde kid who's been discouraged in high school, and again, what are we doing? That why aren't we lifted in a religious school, in a God-fearing school? So what's happening to everybody else? So right. I had that going on. So I really moved to more and more to what's God calling you to do? How can I help? So I go from this dictator to more of a, again, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I did that in the Burger King system. And maybe I told you, Les, that the beauty in fast food is you learn conflict resolution. You have to work in a team. You have to get there on time. You have to deal with customers. Well, guess what? That's life. Every one
That's
of us
life.
has to do that, right?
Every
So
single day.
every single day, we do that all the time. So here's a free, we're going to pay you to learn this
That's a good
skills.
way of looking at it. Right.
We're going to pay you to learn. And I would talk about it all the time. We're going to pay you to do this. And I want you to be, I want you to be what you want to be. I don't want you to be stuck at Burger King the rest of your life. And I'm going to sidebar. So, what we saw happening is they would work for me. They go to Wendy's for a nickel. They go to Macy's for a nickel. It's the same work. They go
Right.
to Myers for another nickel. They go to D&W for a nickel. They come back to me for a nickel. And I'm going, what are we creating here? All we've got is this cycle, and no one is stepping up. And so we created programs to help kids go from food service to manufacturing, or food service to the hospital. So along the way, we created all these relationships where people could actually find stepping stones for themselves based upon what they thought God was calling them to do. Now, what's this 18-year-old know about God? Nothing, right? Other than what their folks told them.
Well,
But
yeah.
they don't have enough life experience to know yet. But for me, Les, that is about then building community. So, I can't sell a $2 Whopper if I'm paying kids $1.25. I need kids making $4 an hour at I'm making numbers up, doing manufacturing so they can afford the $2 for the Whopper.
Right.
So,
So
so
you've taken that and worked it into the bonus structure to make folks who stayed with you, there was some
right,
benefit, but
right.
also you would assist them to their next level of employment
Thank
by
you.
empowering them through your relationships.
Thank you. So we had a relationships with Fred Keller, Cascade Engineering. So he
Mhm.
said to me, if they have good attendance and good work ethic for you for 6 months, we will hire them immediately. And then we'll start to train them. Now we've figured out the Cascade didn't have a really good training program either, but that's all changed. I'm going to put this differently. So when I was at Guiding Light, and for the audience, Guiding Light's a homeless shelter, substance abuse shelter program. And we can all relate to this. The hardest thing we do is pull on a door handle for the first time because we just don't know what's on the other side.
So
Am I
true.
going to like it? Right? Am I going to like it? They're going to respect me? Am I going to get hurt? What is going to happen? So I wanted them to pull on the door handle, and I wanted them to come in the building. I wanted them to experience our love for them. Um, we all fall on hard times. This
Yeah.
is unconditional love. We're going to lift you up. We're not going to give you anything. We're going to give you rules, what we're going to give you, but we're going to
Right.
help you get there. What is God calling you to be? So I go from a dictator to this, I don't know what you call it now, but I try to empower people around their personal gifts is what I
Right.
try to do. So,
Okay. And
so even back to the mentoring, I'm real clear with my mentees. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to ask stupid questions. This is for you to figure out. This is what your passion is. Now, if I think you're going to make a really big mistake, I'll say something.
that allows people, like you said, it kind of goes back to what the kids today are not doing. They're
Right,
not taking the time to do the due diligence required to really find out how what needs to go into a business, or what needs to go into their career path, or what they need to do to survive until tomorrow. And that's, as parents of this generation, it's kind of our fault, I guess my
right. It is.
generation. Yeah, because
Oh,
we tried to make things a little lighter for them, and
yeah.
we created a generation of folks who don't know how to work through problems. And
I right. I am amazed in the mentoring how many mentees who have really good ideas refuse to pick up the phone and talk to somebody already doing the work. Business owners want to share their stories.
all right, that's why we're here this morning, Stuart.
Why
That's why I
would
started this. Yeah.
So sometimes I go, well, I'm not going to, you and I aren't going to talk again until you make 3 calls.
Hmm.
Make the call. And
Right.
you've, and if you can do it in person, I'd rather have you do it in person.
That that
And
that phone game wasn't gonna work when we were, 30 years ago when we were doing it. We had to go
No,
sit down. If I can come to your office and meet you, or if you're like, no, you're not coming to my office, but I'll meet you at the restaurant and we can sit down and talk
yeah,
and go from there, if we're somewhere else. So yeah, that pressing of palms uh really opened many doors,
yeah.
because if
This
you could, yeah, yeah,
is the thing we've ever done.
yeah, that thing there, yeah, if it doesn't, we need to get kids outside of using that as much, and also I guess that's adults, because I've kind of relied on that a lot too. So
Yeah. Well, we used to talk on the phone. Now we want to text. I'm going.
yeah.
At least when you called me, I didn't have to answer it. Right.
Right, right. Well, I want to use this opportunity to transition into the last phase of the questions and the closing reflections of our conversation this morning. When you look back at your journey from building the largest Burger King empires in the country to now serving your community, what do you see as a common thread between what you were doing then and what you're currently doing with your mentors or mentees? I'm sorry.
I believe in the potential of people. No one gets up in the morning to make a mistake on purpose. Where there are mistakes, it's usually a leadership issue, lack of communication or lack of training. People aren't built to make mistakes. Now, there's some styles that change as I mature or grow older, but I do have this faith in folks. I was never a fan of throwing a kid out of school because he brought something he shouldn't have. Um, that usually starts at home. That's
Right.
usually right. They learn these things at home. When we had our first racial confrontation in a local high school, the superintendent went to kick out the kids, and I'm going, stop. It's not their fault. We have to go upstream, and we don't
Yes.
do that. We don't do that child any benefit. You may feel better. We're not doing him or her any value when we do that. I'm not a big fan of this locking folks up. I'll put this another way that Les, when you and I were 18 and we got stopped for open container in a car, the policeman said, hey, just don't do that again.
Yeah, dump it out.
Dump it out, right?
Yeah.
But today, if you get stopped, you're going to jail and
No.
it's on your record.
Right.
And right, there are court fines attached to this. And if you come from the wrong family, you may not get out from underneath this thing.
That's tied to that complex, that prison industrial complex.
Yeah, we have become more vengeful, I think, and less compassionate. Adolescence is about experimentation,
And mistakes.
and
Yes.
mistakes, and if we don't make them, we don't learn a lot. So I believe in folks, and I believe in second chances, and I don't think people make mistakes on purpose, and I think when they do, it's my fault. Now I sleep okay. Don't take me wrong, but I think it's a communication leadership issue. And you know that, Les, you know this. I see this with the mentees. They are so afraid of picking the wrong name for their LLC. They, they just don't get going. Stop. This is all fixable. You can change this. You can do DBAs, but let's get going.
Let's get going.
Let's get
Yeah.
going. And
This is I'm gonna just stop, because that's just happened with me with this podcast thing. One of the lessons I learned, and I'm just starting this, but the lesson I learned that you just repeated was just do it. Just get started. Make your podcast the worst podcast you can make it right now. Plan on it, because at least you're starting. And
yes,
that's where we are, and that's what the kids are missing these days is just do it. That was Nike's old slogan, just do it. And we did it. But people are so concerned with that first step and making sure everything is perfect, which is not going to happen anyway. Just do it. So Yeah, I agree with you 1000%. So the last question that I have on the serious note, business stuff, is one about setting up your families correctly. Because I don't know if you spend time on social media or not. There are a lot of folks out there online and on social media that are having these quick conversations about all you need to do is set up this trust and 3 LLCs here and all that. But you actually had to do some things because when you sold the business, you wanted to set up your family for the rest of not only your lives, but for your children and grandchildren's lives. So I don't know if there's any particular lessons or anything that you don't mind sharing that you would recommend to somebody who is working to get to that position of selling a business, but then having some tools to set up the proper channels to make that investment, make that earn money, uh, do what it has to do for your family. Any suggestions or ideas or thoughts or something that you learned through that process?
When we wrote our first estate plan, the attorney says, I can't tell you what to do, but I wouldn't leave anything to the kids. And that's exactly what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
Will it be something at the end? Yeah. But we were very clear, this is your journey. This is not a journey. I may pay for education. You may get a car out of this, but um, we're not setting you up for life here. This is your journey. And would I have liked someone to come into the business after all that? Sure. They didn't, which is fine. And they're all very successful in their own ways today. So
That's the
Ann
most
and I,
important thing.
they're good parents. They're all contributing members of society. They all enjoy the work they're doing. Their kids are all successful. So we really think we've done our job there, if that makes any sense. So
It
I'm
makes a
gonna.
lot.
Ian comes from a dirt farming family. They pick strawberries. They had a pick your own strawberry field so they could send Ian to college.
All right.
We were next door neighbors. My family wasn't any better off. When the BK thing came along, 19 restaurants, $20 million purchase price. People said I was crazy. And we've already talked about this. When the golden ring comes, you yank on it. And you yank hard. All the way through college, we ate pot pies. They were 10 for $1 at family fare back then. We ate peaches out of a can and cottage cheese and Dale bread. And I said to
Mm.
myself, we can always go back to that. So when we went down this road, we said, here we go. Let's see where this takes us. So we were never one to say that, unless I'm sure you know this, and I've already talked about the Zigo. We go from a 1,700 square foot house in Ottawa Hills, which is an established neighborhood in Grand Rapids. We moved to Ada, which is where Amway is. We built a 4,000 square foot house. We then go to a 7,500 square foot house, 7 bedrooms, 7 bath. So this is culture pushing on things, right? This
Right.
is so the mistake we made is every kid had their own phone, they had their own bedroom, and we lost family. They all went to their own space. And Ann and I at the same time said we have made a huge mistake. Now, I'm very thankful for what we supplied to the kids, that we were able to love and hug them. They didn't have any college debt. I think that was a mistake. Today, I would have done that differently.
Okay.
But they launched. We were able to launch those kids. So we never really thought much about ourselves. So we have continued to live humbly. We don't live in a big we don't live in a big house. House we enjoyed most was 1,600 square feet, no attic, no basement. So if you wanted two toasters, there wasn't room for it.
The little things.
I don't think that's very helpful for
I do.
that's
I do. What you shared initially is what we see Bill Gates doing, what we see the other
that's
folks who
true.
are well off. They're not leaving things for the kids,
That's true.
So that is definite, and there's a reason behind that. And I think that's a whole different show that I'll get into with someone with estate planning, because that is what the wave that we're seeing right now. So thank you for that response. When we opened today, We had a few this or that questions, and I like to close the same way. So I'm going to tie the knot, bring it back around for a last shot of quick response, this or that question. So, Stuart, number one, do you prefer to call or text?
Call.
All right. Work
Call.
as part of a team or solo?
Oh, so
That was a little struggle to get that answer out, but we'll take it. And as an entrepreneur, I understand that too. Do you learn from a book or you learn by doing?
doing.
All right. Are you a talker or a listener?
Listener.
You build from scratch or do you buy established?
Scratch.
And last question, McDonald's or Burger King?
Oh, oh gosh. Go ahead.
Say it
What?
again. Say it again.
I haven't been in a BK in 20 years.
Okay. That says a lot. So, in closing, I would like to say, Stuart, I'll never forget that moment you cracked the door open for me. It wasn't about just about burgers or buildings. It was about belief. You showed me what opportunity looks like when someone's willing to bet on you. And that's a lesson I've carried into every business I've touched since our initial meeting. So thank you for betting on me back then. And I thank you for the work you're doing right now. It is definitely proof that we should be in a constant rebuilding phase. Thanks for joining the rebuild and have a great day.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thanks for joining today's podcast. I'd like to kind of recap some lessons or some key ideas that Stuart shared today. He discussed who you know. Who you know is very important when you're entering into the business world. Uh, Relationships. It's all about relationships. And I used to say, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Because I can say, I know Michael Jordan, but realistically, can he turn around and say, I know Les Allen? So me knowing Michael Jordan really don't mean nothing at the end of the day. But when Michael Jordan says, I know Les Allen, that means a world of difference. There's a lot more clout, a lot more weight to that. So it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Point two, sometimes in anything in life, you have to, Stuart said, you have to wait out or outweight politicians to get things done. So basically, what he's saying is if you have a new site and there's a politician or a group of politicians who are against it, it might make sense to take that site and table it until the reelection and see if those politicians are in office or if that number of changes for the vote. And I'm saying politicians, but that could be zoning board or planning board. So sometimes you have to outweight the group who's making decisions. So if you have the means to table a property or table an idea or table whatever you're discussing, you might have to do that. You can't push everything through in the time you want it. So patience is very important in business. Another point that he made was having backlog. Backlog means that you have future work because without future work, you don't have future business. And that's very important in any business. So you can get a one sale, a two sale, that'll only generate business or allow your business to last for however much overhead you have into that and general conditions you have into that bid or into that proposal. But when you have backlog, meaning I've got two jobs going on right now, I've got another one set to start in a month. I have two more that are set to start 2 months from now, and so on and so on. That means you have future opportunities in your business. So that's what's key in most businesses is having a backlog that allows you to predict your sales. And that's why it's important to have salespeople out there. Another point that he said is to have high standards. I was raised with that. If you don't have high standards, why would anyone else who works for you have those standards? Or why would you expect your kids to have high standards if you don't instill that or require that of them? You can't just say, do as I say, not as I do, because people are watching you. So if you're not living to high standards, more than likely, the people who are in your circle are not going to be able to carry those standards either. So just be careful. Try to your best to live the best that you can. Keep high standards for yourself, your family, and your business, and everything should work out well as long as you work hard with those high standards. And then he talked about learning styles. Everyone has their own their particular learning style. I think he mentioned that there are like 142 different learning styles, and our school systems really just look at teaching out of 3 different learning styles. So don't be discouraged if you're not learning. As an older person, I'm calling myself old now, I am somewhat technologically challenged in some instances. So I lean on younger people to help me learn this. Or if I'm really having a block, I have to take time and study it myself. So pay attention to your learning styles. Learn what your learning style works best for you. I'm a doer. I'm not a listen or read a book and know how to do it. I have to physically put my hands on it to really know that I know it. And then the final thought, and I think it's more than a thought that Stuart shared today, that was the potential of people, understanding the power of the potential of people. If you believe that people are valuable and that they each bring some value to what you're trying to do, then you have the opportunity to lead them, to have them effectively do what you need them to do to help your business thrive, but also to help themselves thrive. So always remember that people have power as long as you believe in it with them and teach them to believe in it. If they don't, they'll go a lot farther in the world. Thank you for your attention today. God bless. Thanks for tuning in to The Rebuild. Peace.